Kevin Lee has resurfaced. Kevin Lee has spoken up. Kevin Lee said for the foreseeable future, he will be competing at 170 pounds. I got to tell you, right there, I got to have a hard stop. I am very happy to hear that. Kevin worked so hard to get down to 155. Now he's got the knee injury. He's got a little bit of time. He hasn't been in the ring in a minute. I mean, right, it's a real life and a real discipline for Kevin to get to 155. And I can tell you as a guy who's trained with Kevin Lee, he doesn't need to be at 155. He simply does not need to. He just has the strength. He just has the strength for 170. And knowing what Kevin went through and even the missed weight cuts, he's putting a little bit of focus in the wrong area. And as you get older, it becomes harder and harder to do. And Kevin's not afraid to do hard things, okay? That's not my message. But when I say hard, I'm talking time consuming. You got to choose. Am I going to go get that extra lift in? Or do I got to go sit in the sauna? Can I go get that extra one-on-one with my coach in? Or I got to put my shoes on because I got to go for a run to get these calories off. Like at some point, you have to choose what you're going to do with your time. That's not conducive for I love that Kevin's at 170. Guys, I'm bearing my lead here. He called out Mke Perry, and he called him out for July 10th, which is pertinent. Now, let's back up. Mke Perry, if you would have told me, give me 20 names that Kevin Lee is going to call. If you told me, give me 100 names Kevin Lee is going to call out, I'd have put Amanda Nunes and Cyborg on that list before I got to Mke Perry. I just didn't see it. And I love it. I like anything that Mke Perry's doing. I'm in to the whole Mke Perry gimmick. But if you break that fight down, you got two bangers. What do you think? Kevin's going to flip the script and just go take Mke Perry down? Well, tell me somebody else that has done. Mke Perry's a tough night out. Like that or not, he is. He's beatable. He's a tough night out. I never would have seen this. I love that fight. I love more 170 for Kevin Lee. I love that Kevin Lee is healing because now let me bring you to why July 10th is relevant. Kevin is coming off these ACL tears, and I've been in contact with him. How you feeling? How you doing? What does the doctor says? And there's many times, Kevin, stop. Take another month. Take 2 more months. But it's a battle. It's a battle with him in text messaging where he's trying to rush it. This is just one of those things you don't rush. Hard as that is to do. Especially when you're Kevin, especially when you're hungry, especially when you're out for a little bit, especially when, you're working with your brother and you got to have a reason to get in the gym and train, especially. Time out. Take that extra time. Kevin is very close to ready today. No reason to not be a little bit more ready. So I like July 10th. I was talking to my buddy Ryan earlier. He cares about Kevin as well. He thinks that's a little bit early. Ryan knows something about ACLs. I think that July 10th, I think we're 100%. I think we're 100% in about the next 14 days here, quite frankly. I think we're being very cautious. I like July 10th. I have a feeling Mke Perry is going to quickly accept that fight. I don't know how anybody's going to say no to that, right? Kevin Lee's never called out anybody. He's accepted fights. He's been called out. Islam Makhachev comes to mind. Called him out. Kevin accepted instantly. By the way, should I mention that fight was going to be in Russia? Kevin didn't care. So now that Kevin's actually calling somebody out, I'm curious as to why. Because with Kevin, it's not going to be the usual deduction of, I've seen his style and I think it's a good match for me. No, something happened. Perry did something. Or at least the way Kevin sees it. Perry has wronged him. I don't have that juicy nugget, but I will. I just got hit with this and started talking to you guys. I love it. Mke Perry, Kevin Lee. I love it. And I would not have predicted it. And I'll tell you something else. You talk about Kevin Lee. His career is very tied to that of Tony Ferguson. Benny DeRouche, who's getting ready to fight Tony Ferg, said, I'm just as crazy as he is when we get in there. And if you know Benny, that's true. Benny might be the most unassuming cage fighter you've ever met. And if you met him in any situation other than with your t-shirt off, wearing your short pants with your mouthpiece in, you're not going to guess that's what he does for a living. But something does change when that referee says, are you ready? And he says, yes, I am. So he said, I'm just as crazy as him when we step in there. And I like that. And Dana had also weighed in on this fight because Dana said that if Tony beats DeRouche, Tony's right back into the upper echelon conversation at 155. You want to know why I like that? Because Tony is doing something he's not getting any credit for. Tony made Charles Oliveira. Charles may tell it a different way. Tony made Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira's beaten a lot of guys. How come he didn't get a world title fight? He beats Tony Ferguson, he gets a world title fight. Where's the thank you to Tony Ferguson? Now, Tony Ferguson's doing that same thing for DeRouche. Nobody else at 155 is doing this. Nobody at 155 has got a little rub or a little bit of shine is doing anything to help somebody else. I mean, you remember when Nate Diaz did this for George Masvidal, but it was real. George wasn't George yet. George needed that fight. George was on his way to being George. He had that big win over Askren. He was growing the hair out. He was doing the cool interviews. He was letting you know, but he wasn't George yet. He needed that fight with Nate. I remember Nate getting a thank you. So I only bring that to you because the fact that Dana is recognizing it. Saying, look, I see what Tony's doing over here. I see the risk that he's taken. And he will go right back to the absolute top, right? Other guys could beat Benny Dariush. They're not going into main events and title fights and title contention talk. Why would Tony? Somebody else beat Dariush. They don't get to go into the talk for a title because they didn't take the same risk. That's your answer. They weren't looking out for anyone else. There's your answer. So Dana saw this from a distance, identified what Tony's doing, recognized it as a cool move, not to mention a rare move in this sport, particularly in this time, and said he rewarded for it. Man, I was happy to hear it.